This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Looking forward to another great broadcast as always. What's up, cuz?
How was your Super Bowl Sunday, man?
You know what? I didn't have a lot of expectations going into it. I just wanted to sit in front of the TV and veg out. That was my only goal, was to watch the pregame show from 9 a.m. until the game, and it just went by so fast. I was just blinking. I told Andrea, I'm like, man, this went by really fast. And the game, I sat on the couch, did some things, wrote some things, and all of a sudden it's like 3 o'clock. And I'm like, man, time is really flying. The game got there, and it was a dud, an absolute dud of a Super Bowl. And give credit, because I like that. I like it when the best team wins the game outright. No suspense. I'm not the kind of guy that complains about the halftime show. Wasn't for me. I like the Weeknd's music, but I wasn't down with the performance. It just wasn't that great, so I was more on Twitter. And by and large, I was like, for the first time, I told myself, man, maybe I'm a little bit burnt out on sports, where it's supposed to be a culmination. But I've said it before on the podcast, I actually like the talking actually a lot more than the game. I like the stories. I like the predictions. I like the background of what's going on. I like the analysis way more than I did the actual game, because it was a dud. But it was great to see Tampa Bay destroy the Chiefs in the trenches. That's the way football is played. That's the way I would like the Lions to win it. Not Mahomes style, Tampa Bay style. Run it down their throat, have a nice lead, open the second half with run, pound it, win in the trenches. I loved that style of football, but the game sucked and almost put me to sleep.
Did the Lions miss out by not going after or not waiting for Todd Bowles so they could go after him?
See, that's very interesting now, in that it opens up the Lions for criticisms in a lot of ways with, did they trade Matthew Stafford too soon? Did they not take advantage of a coach? Now, look, everything is sweeter when you got Tom Brady. Everything. People perk up. You got better players. You thinking Ndamukong Suh at 33 years old plus is going to play like that in Detroit for Todd Bowles? It's just all a byproduct of circumstances where everything culminates together, where you got a nice offense with Fournette, Brady, Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, and then you got a great defensive front that's obviously well coached. And I'm sometimes, it's okay, and I think people get offended when people say, you know what, Todd Bowles probably is not going to be a legendary head coach, but somebody like a Wade Phillips that can slot in and be a great defensive coordinator, I think people view that as a slight. Sometimes there are some people that are meant to stay in one lane, and then when they get promoted to the top lane, it just doesn't work out. It just doesn't blend all together.
Well, it's a completely different skill set.
Exactly.
Like, if you're a head coach, you're basically managing egos.
Yes.
And you're basically helping formulate game plans and just kind of stirring the sauce. If you're a defensive coordinator, it's your sauce. You're making it. You're in the kitchen. You're the one who's putting it all together, and you're putting the guys in place. And look, I think Todd Bowles executed a game plan perfectly in this Super Bowl, and Super Bowl wasn't even on our radar here. Look at how this has just kind of turned into a great conversation. But I think he took advantage of what was in front of him, and I think he let his defensive front really execute and take over that game. I mean, you had two turnstiles as a left and right tackle on the Chiefs' offensive line. Patrick Mahomes was running for his life, almost 500 yards. That man ran backwards or side to side to avoid sacks and to avoid pressures and from getting hit. And he did some miraculous things as he was either getting popped or as he was falling down. He was an amazing. He put on a show. It didn't resort in any scores, any touchdowns, anything. Didn't really help the offense at all. But he looked magical. But all that being said, Todd Bowles executed his game plan to perfection. Let the defensive front take care of business. Put all the pressure on Mahomes, and then let your back seven essentially just kind of fall back and play zone. They played basically cover 2 the entire game. It was nuts. Absolutely nuts. And it was successful. I don't think the Lions missed out. I think Todd Bowles was a guy who totally took advantage of a situation with that Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. And again, you might be right. He might be more suited at being a defensive coordinator. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Some guys are just a little bit better suited at handling all the voices and handling all the people in the room. And that's usually where your head coach comes in. Now I want Sean Payton, I think, is a great example, right? Sean Payton's a pretty good offensive mind, right? Mm-hmm. But Sean Payton is extremely well versed at incorporating everybody into the fold and then making sure everybody's voice is heard and then getting the most out of all of his guys. That's why he's a really good head coach. I'll let you go. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fascinating because I do think Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich will both get opportunities to run their teams. And I think that Bruce Arians will have one more crack at it with Tom Brady, and then they'll disintegrate because they'll run up against the cap, they'll lose the coaches, Tom Brady probably will retire. But I do think an interesting point was brought up when Roger Goodell addressed the media. A question was asked, and it said, look, do you think that teams should not be allowed to interview coaches until the Super Bowl is done? Because then Todd Bowles would be number 1 on the list. You now have potentially Byron Leftwich, who could be number 2 on the list after a Super Bowl. When the interview process starts during the playoffs, then you get guys like Eric Bieniemy who are actually, in fact, indeed penalized for being winners. So I would tend to kind of, in the past, maybe not agree with that idea, but I think to even out the playing field, if your true intention is to get the best staff and the most diverse staff, because still, it brought up all weekend long. Even Anthony Lynn at his introductory press conference for the Detroit Lions, an offensive coordinator was asked. Dude, there's only, of the 7 hires, 2 were minorities and only 1 black head coach. So I'm of the opinion that if you really want to make it more diverse, you open it up to the point where you say no team can hire a head coach, begin the process until the Super Bowl is done. And that really would probably eliminate, the problem where some really talented coaches, most notably Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs and Todd Bowles, they would have jobs. If it was open now, you could see a completely different shift. So I'm all aboard with that. Open it up a little bit. What's the rush? I mean, you can push things back. There's no rush in that sense by delaying it. So I'm all aboard that. I think Todd Bowles would have a job. I don't know if he'll ever, like I said, be successful as a head coach. He'll get it. He obviously is going to be the Robert Saleh next time around. He'll be choice A as long as the Bucs defense plays semi-near what they did in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably right, but you could also back channel this, and you can do different things. I get what you're saying about not allowing basically teams to hire new coaches or general managers until the whole season's said and done. The problem with that is the season moves at such a quick pace once the season's over, right? Now everybody's getting their staffs together, and everybody's starting to look at the draft, and everybody's looking forward towards the draft, which is really and truly maybe 6 weeks away right now. I mean, I'd have to sit down and look at the calendar, but I think maybe it's like 6 to 7 weeks away. So that's a very limited time to really start to digest all 300 players that are going to be in the draft and try to figure out what your team really needs and what you're looking at as far as your cap management and guys who aren't going to be there. So I get what you're saying. I feel like if you were to do it that way, couple things would have to happen. You'd have to move the schedule up a little bit. So your OTAs and your off seasons are going to be starting earlier, which then means you're finishing the season earlier, which then means you're not finishing that first week of February. You're probably going to finish sometime in mid-January. And then if you wanted to do all of that, you could essentially leave your draft where it's at. It's just that beginning of the season is going to have to all get escalated.
You see, when I look at these things, I say to myself, the draft I think is going to take place April 29th. I say that you could even push it to May. May 1st, May 2nd. You don't have to, rush into everything right away. You could take your time, especially with COVID now, with the evaluations, with everything that these coaches got to pay attention to. Everything can be done in a way that makes it optimal. And it's not optimal. It's getting there. But I love Roger Goodell. I love the way the virtual coverage was. Got to sit in all week long. Post-game, he said virtual is going to be around for a while, so I love that, potentially maybe being included in coverage, but I think it's going to mean in the offseason where these dudes can stay home. learn offenses and defenses from the comforts of their home. I just hope it extends to the media because it was amazing. I was part of it the whole way, Monday through Sunday, got to sit in on NFL analysts breaking down the Lions, great quotes from the analysts. You know, you had unbelievable access, more so than ever before, just by the very notion of being able to sit at home and cover it. It was amazing. It was so great to be able to cover it in that light. So all in all, it was a successful season. And look, you and I said it. You got to give the NFL a ton of credit for getting the Super Bowl played, finishing the season, jobs were saved, lives were kept intact, and thank goodness that the resources were there to be able to fund and analyze all the testing and do everything possible because the season got played. No game was canceled. Moved around, games played on Wednesday, games played on Thursday, Friday, all over the place, but it allowed for the season to commence, and everybody was definitely impressed by what happened. And so now we get to turn around and say, you know what? The Lions are similar to the Bucs in that they're trying to bring in a bunch of cohesive coaches, a bunch of young ex-NFL players that are getting into the mix here. They're going to relate and teach these players. There's a lot of similarities to what the Buccaneers and Lions could try and accomplish here, and I'm impressed with it. Now, is Dan Campbell the next Bruce Arians? No, Bruce Arians got so much experience. He coached in a Super Bowl. He had a lot of experience in terms of what he was doing there. So what an amazing fit for the Bucs. But the Lions, cuz, you get that quarterback. That's the key. If you find that young quarterback to take this to the next level, we have to be resigned. And it's tough because we're coming off the excitement of watching beautiful football. And we've said it before on podcasts. The great part is we watch the Lions and we get used to watching penalties and mistakes and missed assignments all year long. And then you watch the playoffs and you're like, you get your body's shocked. Like, what the hell is this? These guys are like running, efficient plays. Everything's great. You see beautiful defense, beautiful offense. You see the best of the best. So I look at it and I say, guys, get ready. You're starting to see now people are prognosticating that the Lions could be the worst team in the National Football League in 2020. Get ready. I know there's the hype and people are excited about the coaching staff, what you see. The hires are decent. But guys, get ready. They're going to have to infuse talent into this roster. And even under the best circumstances, organizations typically don't rise up that fast. So 2021, after the draft, I know you'll be happy with who they got. Get ready. I'm warning you now on February 11th. It's going to be a nightmare 2021. And I think people are bracing themselves for it, but when they actually see it, it's going to take time. Give them a pass. The next 365 days, they're trying to broom out all the bad players, and now you have to kind of look to the draft and be positive and be hopeful. But I would say that this next 12-month stretch in terms of what the Lions are going to go through is going to be tough on the field at least. And so be excited about the draft. And now you and I are starting to peek at it, and we're starting to see these reports that come out because people are really looking at it from two perspectives right now. They're going, all right, Lions got a quarterback. They don't got any receivers. So you're looking at the initial phase of mock drafts, looking at Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, which I think some people who are messaging us are getting pissed at. And you got some small that are looking at Micah Parsons, some defenders. But the one thing that's going to be more fascinating is, do the Lions invest in a quarterback in the first round? Now, you're hearing whispers, maybe Trey Lance could be that guy that has the elusiveness, but he's raw. I don't think Trey Lance is the investment at number 7. I think you wait. I think you wait until the 5th round, or even so, wait until potentially 2022 to pick a quarterback, or maybe even someone that falls out of favor. I don't think the quarterback is going to be drafted, maybe not at all, in 2021. What do you think? Should they? Should they look at quarterback? I think wide receiver might be the starting point on offense, and we'll talk about that too.
So let me ask you this. Do you think the Lions are going to be any good next year?
No. 5 wins max. I cap 6.
Exactly. It doesn't do you any good to go ahead and draft a quarterback unless you're absolutely in love with somebody. Like if you fall in love with, say, Trey Lance, right? Say he's your guy. You think he is the second coming of Patrick Mahomes. if that's the case, go ahead, draft your quarterback, right? I mean, if I told you that at 7, the Lions draft Trey Lance and he goes on to mimic what Patrick Mahomes does, you'd be ecstatic about that. You'd be pumped. You'd be like, all right, cool. We're going to at least play in a Super Bowl at some point then. I don't think he's the same player. I don't think the guys in this draft, at least where the Lions will be drafting, unless they're moving up, which I think if they move up, they're silly for moving up. I don't think these quarterbacks are all that impressive compared to a guy like I've fallen in love a little bit with Zach Wilson. I don't even know if he's that great, but I don't think anybody holds a candle to Trevor Lawrence. Like if it's Trevor Lawrence, yeah, you go in all day long. I think you wait till next year. Maybe you wait till the following year. I don't think you go quarterback at 7. What I do think you possibly do, and I think you'd be ecstatic about, is probably trade back. But if you're stuck at 7, I don't even know if I go wide receiver. Why would you go wide receiver? You don't have a quarterback yet, right? So Jared Goff we're assuming he's your bridge quarterback. He's going to be the guy here for the next 2 years. Not 100% sure if he's going to be the long-term solution or if he's just kind of a Band-Aid right now. So you don't have a quarterback. Your defense is absolutely brutal. You've got a ton of holes on your defense. Or what you could possibly do is maybe shore up your offensive line so that way when you do get your quarterback of the future, it's that much better. So you can go get a guy like Penei Sewell, or you can go get a guy like Micah Parsons. You can go get a defensive tackle. You can go get an edge rusher. You can go get whatever you need. I don't think you need to necessarily focus on the offensive side of the ball. Yes, at some point, you're going to have to draft a wide receiver, or you're going to have to bring a couple wide receivers in, because right now you've got Quintez Cephas, and that's all you've got on your roster. You don't have anybody else on your roster that's signed to a contract. I don't think you go out and I don't think you draft a quarterback. I think you maybe pump the brakes, look at what's happening next year, because, look, I'm assuming, and I can't look into a crystal ball and tell you what the future is, but I'm assuming that this team is not going to be very good next year. I think you have too many holes on your offensive and your defensive side of the ball, and I don't know if with a brand new coaching staff. I think we both have talked about this before, and we both agree that this first year is kind of trial by error. We're going to see what they can do, and then they're going to kind of figure it out and make some adjustments. I don't know if Jared Goff is a good enough quarterback to be able to cover up or mask any of those inadequacies that this coaching staff has. So I think you're going to be bad. I think you're probably going to finish somewhere in the top 3, maybe in the top 5 next year. So automatically you're going to be in a better draft spot than you are this year. So all that being said, with the extra pick that you're getting from the Rams, if you really found a quarterback that you absolutely fell in love with, you could always move up and get that guy next year if that was the case. So I don't think you draft a quarterback this year. I'm not saying that it's not an option here. If there's a guy who you absolutely fall in love with, sure, go ahead and take him. But I don't think there's any push to go get that quarterback.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I don't see that guy. Not at number 7. I would love it if you went balls to the wall.
1, sure. If you're drafting at 2, maybe. But after that, I mean, we haven't even talked about this. We keep saying that we're going to talk about this. Like Justin Fields, he had a great game. He had an absolutely marvelous game against Clemson. Fantastic. Guy played his ass off. Justin Fields, if you watch his games, you really dissect his film, he's really bad at decision making. When the pressure's on, he just kind of looks to a spot and throws a ball. You can go back to that game against Clemson. He had a tight end wide open. Instead, he threw it to the guy that was double covered. Now, the tight end ended up making the catch, and he squeezed it into a very, very tight window, which was impressive, but it wasn't the right play. It wasn't the smart play. Yes, it resulted in a touchdown, but that was not the right play. That was not where he should have went with his ball. The read said go someplace else, and he ended up throwing it into that window. I mean, unless you want probably a best way I could describe it, a more athletic early rendition of Matt Stafford is what I believe Justin Fields is, right? A guy with all the arm strength in the world, a guy who's gutty, a guy who plays with some grit. He's much more mobile, but the decision-making is not great. Remember, early in Matt Stafford's career, he threw a ton of interceptions. That's what I feel Justin Fields is. He's just a more athletic Matt Stafford. Trey Lance, I don't know enough about Trey Lance. He played 1 game this year, and he looked pretty good going into this season, but then their season got cut short. They played a game. I'm not sure what to make out of that. I know that I don't like Kyle Trask. I think he's extremely volatile. He's very hit or miss. So, I mean, after number 1 and after possibly number 2, I don't know what you got there as far as quarterbacks, man. Like, there's nobody there that I'm like, oh, man, you got to go get that guy. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And Anthony Lynn said it. He said that the starter's there. It's tapped. I mean, a lot of no shit writing kind of came out of the initial wave of what the reporters were writing. I mean, you have Jared Goff making over $20 million. You think he was going to take a back seat? So that's the angle you guys took right away. It's like, no shit. The best part will be now if they do take a quarterback and he shines and Goff struggles, do they have the balls to put him in there, and how fast? Because it happened with Lynn, with Justin Herbert, in that something freaky happened. The plan was to have Tyrod Taylor, but Justin Herbert went in there, and if the quarterback shines and takes the job, then it becomes a moot point. So, yeah, Jared Goff's the starter. All you beat writers, it's kind of weird. We all know that already. You got the quotes now that he said it. It's like there's some common sense to realize that day one, probably going to be Jared Goff. I mean, that'd be cold-blooded if they turn around and flipped him. That'd be awesome. But they're not. He's going to be under center, and Brad Holmes wants to have his ego kept intact. To be like,
well, you know what? Let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
So basically, the Lions have set the precedent for what the market is for a quarterback.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a Matt Stafford deal, right? You hear talks about the Eagles, and the Eagles will only trade if they get something similar to what Matt Stafford fetched, which I think is crazy for Carson Wentz. But whatever, neither here nor there. I'm not saying that you could get a first-round draft pick for Jared Goff, right? And I don't even know if there's a market out there for Jared Goff. But if you could somehow squeeze a late second or a third out of Jared Goff for a team, say like, I don't know, Carolina, who maybe feels like he's a little bit better than, I don't know, a Mac Jones who might be there, or a Trey Lance, or depending on how this goes, right? I mean, you've got New England who's looking for their next option at quarterback at 15. And there's a good possibility, depending on what happens in front of them, if they don't move up, and usually New England is a team that likes to move back in the draft, there's a good possibility that they could be left holding a bag where they have zero quarterback to go get. Could you possibly see trading a guy like Jared Goff and somehow getting a second or third round pick? Would you be on board with something like that? So that means you're going into the season, you don't have a quarterback,
and you're
looking at Chase Daniels as your quarterback,
and a big cap hit to do it. It would really fuck up your cap to do something like that. You got him to be the bridge quarterback. That's what he is.
No, exactly. I agree with you 100%.
Flipping him is a pipe dream. It's just not realistic in that sense. But the quarterback talk, man, what's going to happen? But the good thing, my big takeaway from the pressers were the coaching staff is definitely speaking. The new coaches are talking in a much more succinct, direct manner. They're open to talk about things. Basically they've said, Aaron Glenn has come out and said in his introductory meeting on Wednesday, look, these guys look confused out there. They don't look like they're playing fast. They look like they're way overthinking. We got to get that done. We got to get that locked up. And it instilled confidence. These guys look like, okay, we don't have a lot of experience, but at least we know in general what we're supposed to say and do. Now it's going to be about instilling and getting the right players in here to buy in and really ball out. Because right now it's going to be a build through the draft. Because if you're anybody with anything, if you're a Levante David and you're going to be potentially coveted by a couple teams to play, are you really going to come here to Detroit if you're in Ndamukong Suh? No. It's a rebuild, so they're going to have to build through the draft, selectively pay a couple different people that you're familiar with, and start building through the draft until you can convince people that this is legit. And for the Lions, at this point in their development, it's square one. It's assess who you got, figure out what you need, and put together a competitive football team. The struggles are going to be there, but the next step is then to target who's the next franchise guy. And right now, I don't see the next wow quarterback that's going to take you over the hump a la Patrick Mahomes. That's what's going to take if you want another quarterback that's going to be here for a decade. So good luck with that. Good luck on your journey. We'll dig. We'll have to scour the landscape to see if anybody gets passed over that might be that guy that just needed that little bit of a diss to take that next step. And man, what a fun time now it is. It's draft season, baby. It's hype season. Let's just enjoy it. Enjoy looking and analyzing what the roster is going to look like, because the other couple teams here in town, the Wings and the Pistons, they're rebuilding, but it's not as fun. You look at it, and if we turn our attention to the Red Wings real quickly here, I look over and I start watching and I go, oh my God. They legit signed Anthony Mantha to an extension. And we're still at the point where he's beefing with the head coach. Come on, bro. That's not right. And you look at his numbers, his statistical numbers in certain areas in terms of puck possession, work ethic, things like that. I understand that he's not doing the finer things. And obviously, Jeff Blashill has sent him a message before, and he did it again. What was your reaction to the benching? Because I see certain parts of his game that I like, but I also see what Blashill is getting at here. There are certain times he floats on the ice and does not give the full effort in the 60 seconds. Look, these shifts are short. You got to get in there and you got to go balls to the wall. You got to come off the bench. You got to get to the bench and be all tired. So for Blashill to do it, he had to get permission from Yzerman. Kudos to Blashill. But at this point in time, if it becomes a situation where it's Mantha v. Blashill, I don't see this turning out well for Blashill because the team still sucks.
Well, I mean, I don't think it turns out real well for Anthony Mantha. Remember, Steve Yzerman's not one to play around. He wanted to trade a guy like Braden Point, who's an absolute stud in this league, because he wouldn't get with the program. And then actually Braden Point asked to be traded, and Steve Yzerman said, no, you get with the program, otherwise you're sitting, and that's what happened. So, I mean, I could see it happening the same way here with Anthony Mantha, right? If he doesn't get on board, and remember, was it last week or maybe 2 weeks ago we discussed who our most disappointing players were, and Anthony Mantha was one of mine. Extremely disappointed in his performance, in his production, and his attitude. Look, I don't know what the magic elixir is for Anthony Mantha. I don't know what it's going to take for him to understand that he's got to play both ways. He's got to start listening to what the coaches want out of him and then going out there and performing. This is not one of those things where your skill level is going to put you over the top and you can just kind of do whatever you want. It's not the minors, okay? That works to a certain level. And it really should be worked out of you before you get to this level. Apparently it wasn't. All right. So whoever's fault that is, I don't know. And I'm not here to point fingers. But what I'm telling you is he needs to get with the program and he needs to understand that either you're going to do what the coaches want you to do, otherwise you're not going to play. And if you're not going to play hard both ways, you'll find yourself playing someplace else. And if that's what you want, if that's what you really, really want, you should never have signed that extension. You shouldn't be here then. It's just how it is. And look, he's not that good of a player where he can kind of loaf and he can kind of take time off and take plays off and just kind of coast around the ice. It doesn't work that way. Like you're not a guy like Alexander Ovechkin. You're not a guy like Sidney Crosby. You're not a guy like Anthony Mantha or even a guy like Mitch Marner. You're not that. You know, you are a guy who has to work hard every single time you're on the ice. So get with the program. Otherwise, you've got a guy like Giovanni Smith who gets plugged in for you and goes out there and performs, gets in a fight, scores a goal, has an assist, and the reason he ends up getting his goal is because he's up there forechecking. His forecheck led to the turnover that led to his goal. I mean, it's a very rewarding system when you're up there doing your job. And I just don't know what it's going to take for a guy like Anthony Mantha to get with the program. And look, I know how you feel about Jeff Blashill. I know you don't like Jeff Blashill. I think Steve Yzerman understands what he has with his coach, and I think he realizes that Jeff Blashill is the guy to get them to a certain point, right? And at some point, Jeff Blashill is going to be moved out of here. It's just how it's going to work, okay? Anthony Mantha, if he doesn't get with the program, is going to be moved out of here as well. And I'm not sure if Steve Yzerman has to talk to him and be like, hey, this is the expectation, or if him and Blashill butting heads. I mean, if you read all the stories and read everything, I mean, does this surprise you? Because it sounds like they had these issues when Blashill and Mantha were in the minors together. So I don't think it should surprise you at all.
It's crazy that he hasn't caught on because he's getting benched. A healthy scratch. It's crazy. But Blashill has
the
sent a
sad thing
message.
is he's an extremely talented player. Like, he does have skill. And, like, this team needs scoring. It needs scoring. And Anthony Mantha could provide that. But you also have to play defense. You know, you can't hang everybody else out to dry just because you want to hang out at center. It's not how it works.
I think that it's going to end pretty badly if Mantha doesn't at least handle his business. So really interesting to see because it's ongoing, and I want to see how Mantha reacts because it's an interesting thing with the Red Wings in that they're still struggling to win at a high rate. We're not seeing the progress that we need to see, at least with the Pistons. because you at least see somebody that's balling out, Jeremy Grant. And the situation with the Pistons is really unique in that you start to see the impact of Dwayne Casey on like 3 or 4 members of the roster. The problem is there's 3 or 4 members you want to also see progression in that you're not. But at least bottom line, you're seeing that Jeremy Grant has proven people wrong, and he needed that maybe little extra kick in the ass and have somebody believe in him to get him to score over 25 points a game. And it's been a nice addition to see. The crazy part is that all their wins are against the best teams in the league, which is crazy. They rise to the occasion, and the rest of the time they don't. But I think they're starting to now emphasize playing the youth. Blake Griffin, unfortunately, it's sad to see kind of him hobbling around, missing shots. But because we have to talk about the biggest news story here on the podcast, and that involves the Derrick Rose trade, I'm not happy because, and you can't blame Troy Weaver. This is a massive indictment on last year's regime, and you realize the Lakers probably would have given a first-round pick. Mm-hmm. They would have given you more. Why didn't you pull the trigger? What were you thinking? And unfortunately, Troy Weaver doesn't have nothing to do with this, but if you're the organization and you're the Pistons and you're looking at a high level of analysis of their moves, trading Derrick Rose for a second-round pick and, the carcass of Dennis Smith Jr., hoping that he does anything, is not the same as trading him for a first-round pick, which you could have used, potentially if you were going to be aggressive, you could have had 3 this year. So I guess you did him a solid and you let him go to a coach that loves him, that he just follows wherever Derrick Rose is at. Oh, there's Thibodeau, wants him. But the trade in and of itself, fine. You get more picks and you can trust Troy Weaver to do something with it. But you could have had more for Derrick Rose. It felt like you got him for pennies on the dollar when you could have had him at top market GameStop prices.
So here's the thing. I think you can blame Troy Weaver because Troy Weaver didn't have to make this trade as soon as he did. I mean, we've got, another week, maybe 2 weeks until the trade deadline. There was no rush to necessarily move Derrick Rose out of here. And if what the Knicks really wanted was Derrick Rose, you could have tried to spice it up a little bit, and you could have possibly got your draft pick back that you traded them, which would have been a better draft pick than the pick that you ended up getting. And you're right. This is an indictment on this regime last year, right? Yeah, it would have been a late first-round pick, but it still would have been a first-round pick, which would have gave you a better option to go out and get somebody or to maybe even make some moves with a little bit more draft collateral in last year's draft. All that being said, getting Dennis Smith, I think is okay, right? So you're basically taking a flyer on a guy who, when he was with Dallas, he looked like he was a pretty good player. Ends up getting moved to the Knicks and has just lost all of his confidence. So much so they said, hey, send me to the D League. Let me go down there and play. I mean, Dennis Smith Jr. is a guy who has comparables to Russell Westbrook, right? That's basically the comparison on him, or that was coming out of college. He needs to find a little bit of confidence. He needs a coach to believe in him. He needs to be a guy who is kind of shaped and molded a little bit. And look, with it, you get a flyer to see what you can squeeze out of him. Maybe you squeeze something out of him. If anything, maybe you get a guy who can come off the bench and put a couple buckets in for you. So as far as that goes, I'm okay. My big issue is with the actual draft pick that you got back in return, when last year you could have got a first, or if you held on to him for a little bit longer. And look, I like Derrick Rose. I thought Derrick Rose was a nice addition to this team, to the Pistons team. If you held on to him for a little bit longer, maybe you could have squeezed a little bit more out of the Knicks and got a better pick back in return, a better second-round pick, or just a better pick overall in general, So it's what it is. The thing that if you're going to take anything out of all this, right, understand that Troy Weaver knows what he's doing. Understand that he knows what he has on this roster, and understand that he is trying to make it over as fast as humanly possible, which I think is a good thing. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think you have a capable and competent general manager running this organization, and I think that's seen in the moves that he made at the draft and the moves that he made here by moving an expiring contract of Derrick Rose to get a player that he can kind of take a little bit of a flyer on. And in return, he got some draft collateral, which we've seen him be able to spin into other draft picks, which is a good thing.
Absolutely, man. Good stuff. Good stuff. Real quick, we do got to take a look at some of the stupidest things I've seen online. I just have to let you guys know that you probably shouldn't use Gorilla Glue in your hair.
Bro, can we talk about this for a quick second? So this dummy goes out and she sprays her head with Gorilla Glue, right? She now basically has a helmet for hair. Legitimately, it's a helmet for hair. She could fall on her head and nothing is going to move, and she's not going to get a headache because she has this concrete Gorilla Glued hair slick back. I think the biggest indictment on the human population is this broad has, one, gone viral, two, she's raised enough money with a GoFundMe. Yeah. I'm trying to raise $2,000 for my dog's surgery, and I'm not even halfway there. This broad's raised almost, like $20,000? All she needs is a haircut, people. That's all she needs. You can chisel it away and then just shave her head.
It says glue, Gorilla Glue. What kind of label do you need? Oh, maybe I should really look at this tightly. It says glue, Gorilla Glue. Maybe that means like it's super duper glue, not like super duper can work on your hair. You know, I don't get it. And the photo, I felt so unsympathetic, but her laying in the chair, I just kind of wish the nurse would have slapped her in the back of the head and said, "Girl, what the hell are you doing? Gorilla Glue." Like she looks so sad, and the nurse is looking like, poor thing. It's like you should have been slapped in the back of the head and should have said, they should have told you, what in the world are you thinking? How much weed have you smoked in the last 3 weeks where you think you could put Gorilla Glue and then take a photo of it and then advertise it? You should just walk the walk of shame, go back to wherever you came from and tell your friends, don't ever let that go viral and let that go out. It's crazy. And then for the company to have to go and release a statement, "We are sorry that this product has been used in this manner, but it is not for that." It's like, did you guys read the label as what it's supposed to be used for? It's like a massively powerful adhesive. That's probably the craziest thing you're going to read this week. Oh, man. But literally, there are people like this walking the face of the universe. And unfortunately, there's more and more of them. But this is the way in which the world is going. Guys, you don't need Gorilla Glue on your balls. Just use something else. Take the trimmer. Do what you got to do. Tidy up. But eliminate Gorilla Glue in any sense of the word. Make sure you follow Adam for more great takes on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Thank you for making us part of the Detroit sports scene. It's been real fun for the last 7 years because we're approaching episode 400, baby. We've been going strong since September of 2013, weekly with 0 pauses. Thanks to you guys for going to your favorite place where you download podcasts and you type in these 3 words, Detroit Sports Podcast. And thank you guys for the nice comments. The nicest one came in where they said, "Hey, your shit that we post on our Facebook page, people react to it. Thank you. How about you join the group?" And it was really flattering, and it really hits home to the fact that you guys listen, download, read, you interact with us. You even combat us when we give our hockey takes, Putnam. No problems there. I don't mind it at all. Hop in, message us. Let us know if we're wrong. Let us know if we're right. But thank you. It means a lot when you say to us, "Hey, we like your stuff," and people want to interact with it. And you're never turning us off because we'll just find bigger microphones to scream into. And that's because Doc and Jock are here to stay. We love Detroit sports, and we love broadcasting each and every week. Thanks, guys. Let's let it rip again next week.